Why do you live in Capitol Hill?
This is like one of the most incredibly diverse neighborhoods. If you want beautiful residences, neighborhoods, walkable streets, being somebody who appreciates an urban environment, lots of activity, lots of energy.
It's a good representation of what, a guess of what Seattle culture is like.
And I don't know if this is like a thing, the happy hour measurement. In Ballard, happy hour starts at 4, and it literally starts at 4.
Yeah.
It's busy, people are there. Here, if I go to happy hour at 4, I'm like, yeah, we're the old people going to happy hour at 4. Like, nobody is here. That's another difference in what time the neighborhoods start or the vibes or, when things get going. This is going to be the most energetic, busy place, neighborhood that you can live in. If you want your peace and quiet, this is not the place for you.
Unless you want to have that experience.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Seattle Living and Wealth Building. Super excited about today's show. Why the heck do you want to watch this show? Well, let us tell you. We're going to get deep into the neighborhood of Capitol Hill, Seattle. Yes, Capitol Hill, Seattle. So we're continuing our deep dives into the various neighborhoods around Seattle so you know truly what it's like to live there, what the real estate market is like, what it's like for restaurants, bars, parks, all that good stuff. And you're going to get some experts here who know Capitol Hill, Seattle really well, such as Michael Daper.
Hi.
And myself. So I lived here 10 plus years in Seattle. I've lived in this particular house for 5 years, and we're going to have a lot of fun diving deep into the neighborhood. We've also got Justin Day here.
That's me.
And Justin Day has sold lots of real estate in Seattle and spent a lot of time here too. So let's get this party started. Okay, so Mike, let's start with you.
Yep.
Longtime resident. Michael lives in Ballard.
Yes.
He's lived here a couple years. What's your take on what the Capitol Hill vibe is like?
Well, I moved up here when I was in my 20s, and I moved up here for a specific reason. So in that time, I was playing a lot of music. I was living with people that were playing music, and we wanted to be like close to the scene. It's great for single people, or one of the people that it is great for. So lots of bars, lots of nightlife, restaurants. It's walkable. If you're kind of young and you want to kind of get out of your shell and, go to a neighborhood with lots of diversity, that's why we came here. So my take on kind of why Capitol Hill is great is because it does offer that like feeling of actually being in a city where Seattle is kind of a sprawling city, but Capitol Hill kind of offers that experience that you might see in, a larger like East Coast city. Yeah.
All right. Nice.
So that's why you moved here.
Yeah.
A while ago, of course.
Yeah.
How about you? Why do you live in Capitol Hill?
Why do I live in Capitol Hill? Yeah, so it's the year 2019. I live in Magnolia, which is another awesome neighborhood in Seattle. But Magnolia for me and Lisa, so we're in our early 50s for perspective. Our kids are in college or older. So we had this opportunity to, decide what we wanted our lifestyle to be like. And what we love about Capitol Hill is it's incredibly walkable. If you're going to try to compare like Capitol Hill, Seattle to another neighborhood in another big city, and of course there's lots of differences, but you're more in a city like in San Francisco, like the Mission District, or in Brooklyn, New York, Williamsburg. Everything is incredibly dense. You can walk to so many places. So for us, we bought into this little residential area called the Harvard Belmont District, just north of kind of where all the shops, restaurants, and bars are downtown. So we're in this North Capitol Hill area. And for us, it's afforded us the lifestyle of just being able to walk everywhere and enjoying the diversity of restaurants. We're very much into food. We've also got an awesome dog, Kenji, and we're close to Volunteer Park. So, yeah, we've been able to enjoy all these amenities.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused, though, because, for those who don't know a lot about Capitol Hill, I think everyone's heard about Capitol Hill and maybe some of the challenges that Capitol Hill was experiencing, during the beginning of COVID. I think it was called Chaz or Chop or something like that. Obviously that's what we hear about, but what is it truly like living here? Is there a lot of homelessness? Is there a part of the city or part of the neighborhood that is actually taken over by people right now in an autonomous zone?
Well, we're now 2024, almost 2025, right?
Yeah.
So the pandemic was 2020. If you're holding on to this vision of occupied areas and anarchy, then you're completely clueless and you have no idea what it's like living here. This is like one of the most incredibly diverse neighborhoods, and we are in the city. So yes, is there going to be some homelessness? A little bit. Like not very much, but yeah, I'll walk down a few blocks in front of the grocery store. There'll be a couple homeless people. So if you can't stand that, then you don't want to live here at all, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you want beautiful residences and neighborhoods, walkable streets, I feel incredibly safe here. So I think for me, being somebody who appreciates an urban environment, lots of activity, lots of energy, I love it. But then again, I'm in the north part of Capitol Hill where it is more residential. So I can get into the action when I feel like it, or I can kick back and go to the park, kick up my feet, walk the dog. Seattle Asian Art Museum, Volunteer Park is the biggest park here in Seattle when it comes to like this style of park. So it's more like, closer to, like you wouldn't call it a Central Park because that's massive, but it's one of the biggest parks here in Seattle.
Yeah. So you mentioned diversity a few different times in the neighborhood of Capitol Hill. I mean, I know that Capitol Hill is a massive area and it has a lot of different vibes and feels to it. Who is the type of person that's going to live in Capitol Hill, or is it a lot of different types of people?
Yeah. Lots of different types.
Lots of different types.
Right?
So what kinds of people?
You described yourself as a 20-something.
Right.
So why don't you go in that direction and describe what that would be like for you?
I think if we're just talking about, who might be up here in Capitol Hill, right? The types of people that you might see. So when I was living up here, we were renting a really old kind of rundown house that was perfect for us. And we were right next door to a home that had been renovated and completely remodeled and was worth well over $1 million, right? So us two are neighbors. And you'll see that a lot in Capitol Hill. You'll see people that live in North Capitol Hill, like towards the Volunteer Park, what Maynard was speaking about, that have been in those homes for 40, 50 years. There's, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square foot houses over there. Then you go down a little bit closer towards like the Pike Pine corridor, which would be kind of like the hub of Capitol Hill. Those are going to be mostly condos, apartments. There's students there that are going to Seattle U. There's people that go to UW. You see single people, couples, people with dogs, sometimes people with children, living in a condo down there. So it's all different mixes of people, different incomes. You might see, tech whiz kid who's 25, making 500,000, and you might be living right next to, somebody working at the coffee shop that person goes to every day. So those people get to know each other as well. That's kind of the cool part of it. So that's part of, as far as when we were thinking about the lifestyle, the people are just people. So anytime you get into a dense area with a lot of different housing options for people, a lot of different attractions, you're going to see older people, younger people, wealthy people, lower income people, all of it. But I think that's just true for every city. With that, it's going to come some homelessness. If you're at night around any bar in any part of town, whether it's Capitol Hill or Magnolia even, you got to just make sure that you're behaving as an adult and you'll be just fine. But I never felt any less safe here than anywhere else. Yeah. But definitely a mix, different cultures. People who've lived here for a long time, people that have, just moved here too.
Yeah, that's a great summary. Like extreme diversity is a good way to put it. And Michael described different pockets of neighborhoods. So maybe for perspective, Capitol Hill is about a 2 mile by 2 mile area. Okay, so it's not very big, right? That's 4 square miles. And I don't know, maybe there's almost like 5 distinct neighborhoods.
Yep.
So we are east of downtown Seattle. I can take a 20-minute walk and be in the middle of South Lake Union, where Amazon is and the waterfront is, Google is. So very close to downtown Seattle, where I live. And I live on the edge of like North Capitol Hill, the southern edge of North Capitol Hill, right where the Broadway district is. So the western part has a lot of condos and apartments, big views of downtown Seattle, the Olympic parts. The northern part is far more residential, and you'll have probably average price point is about $2 million for a residential home in this northern part of Capitol Hill. And it goes from here to about 10 blocks north, okay? Then there's also the Pike Pine corridor, which is what you talked about, a couple different streets where tons of bars, tons of restaurants, condo buildings. So if you want to find some action on a Friday, Saturday night, you've got all kinds of activities going on there. Then you've got the 15th Ave East area, which is another strip of kind of restaurants, some new developments that are happening, a little smaller arterial, but residential over there as well, with a mix of condos, apartments, and houses. Maybe average price point for there is like about $1.5 million. Then you go a little further east, they're at 19th Ave East, and then you got another kind of higher end pocket of areas and restaurants and homes. So what is that? That's 5 kind of distinct neighborhoods that you're talking about. Some are more residential, single family. And what's cool is like where I live, I can go for a nice residential peaceful walk where I just want kind of wide streets and take my dog, and there's parks and, you know, people walking about. And then I can also go right into the heart of the action in 2 blocks and go to bars and restaurants and hit my grocery store, which is 3 blocks away too.
Yeah, I think that's really important to know, is that, you know, there's so much diversity here, but, you know, Capitol Hill can fit for a lot of different types of people, and it could be families, it could be single people, or it could be, you know, whatever it may be, right? So, especially as you get into more North Capitol Hill, I mean, you're in a much more residential, suburban type of environment, yet you're right in the heart of everything still. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. Perfect description. Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about real estate a little bit, you know, and you were mentioning some of the price ranges. You know, what does the price point look like for, like, say, one of those condos that we have in you know, the Pike Pine corridor, or you know, a little bit east of where we're at right now?
Yeah. So probably a 1-bedroom around $500,000 to $600,000. Some as low as about 4, so you can get that. You can get even better deals there, like high 2s, but rare, right? Depends on whether you want parking, you know, different considerations. Then you go into like the townhome category, where there are 2 to 3 bedrooms, probably starting at $800 to $900 for a 2-bedroom, and then 3 bedrooms, you know, 1.2, 1.3. We're in a 3-bedroom townhome. Not townhome, but it's a townhome style. It's standalone. There's no shared walls. It's modern, built in 2019. This is probably worth about 1.5 or so. Yeah, and then there's a new development just down the street. Those are brand new, and those are selling for about 1.1 to 1.2. So,
Okay, and then
that's that perspective, right?
Yeah.
And then you get single family, which includes yards, and you go 2 blocks to Federal Avenue. Federal Avenue is a great spot for trick-or-treating, by the way. Right next to Old Park, you get the full-size candy bars. It's very walkable and flat, you know, and there the average price point's got to be $2.5 million.
Okay.
No. And so that's what draws a wide variety of, I guess, diversity, you know, depending on like kind of what lifestyle is important for you, and obviously what your income is, you know, but then you can, you know, rent apartments for, you know, $1,000 for an apartment.
So with Capitol Hill being so diverse and having so much, you know, diversity, so much diversity to it, what makes Capitol Hill really a good real estate investment? And, you know, is it one that you would look at as a great investment, especially with its proximity to downtown?
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
You can give your perspective.
Well, I would just, my gut reaction to that question, if let's say a client asked me that question, the immediate thing that I think about is that this neighborhood, this type of neighborhood, really brings people into Seattle. And then sometimes your life expands in a way, or maybe you, quote unquote, age out of what you previously wanted, but you're still left with an asset that could be easily rented and in quickly too.
Yeah, the rentability here, I'm sure, must be extremely high.
You know, provided, you know, like you don't have an HOA restriction, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I think it's a kind of a no-brainer in some ways where, okay, if I wanted this single, you know, bedroom condo that it's my first purchase, and, you know, I want to be in the city, I want to be in the action, or maybe I want to be close, at least close to it, and then later on you want more space for the same money, or you make a little bit more money and you're ready to let that one go, well, somebody else is going to want that. The next 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old. There's people that move here from the suburbs too. You know, you get people that go, hey, our kids are out and we want to go back and be able to walk and do things.
There we
right?
go. Yeah.
So, you know, it goes both directions. It will always be an attractive asset to own, whether you're, you know, going to be living in it or not. I think prices are relatively stable the closer we get to the city. You don't see the big slingshots, you know, up and down as you would as you go further out.
Yeah, I think that's good perspective. You know, the interesting thing is that, you know, we're in another period where I think there's going to be a big shift in pricing. So what happened is after the pandemic, when downtown kind of shut down and everybody was working from home, right? They wanted more land, more space. So they didn't want a small space like this that offered proximity to work downtown, right? Because they could now work anywhere, right? So there was a flight out of the Seattle area. And so when it comes to what happened in price appreciation since 2020, 2021, Capitol Hill did not appreciate at the same rate as some of the other Seattle neighborhoods. Yes, it had appreciated, but you go to the east side and the suburbs like Bellevue and North, you know, you're looking at massive appreciation. Now what we're already starting to see is, you know, Amazon has let RTO, return to office, required 5 days a week, right? And they still have massive space downtown. And we're already starting to see people want to now buy again downtown. Maybe they're moving back from the suburbs, you know, should they choose to stay at Amazon. But Amazon's a massive employer, and there will be some people who don't choose to make that move and others who do. Just imagine, though, if you are somebody who lives in the suburbs and you're returning to office, all the different costs associated with now having to commute to work, whether it's 45 minutes to an hour, or even if it's 30 minutes, right? You've got time, 2 hours a day. If you got kids, maybe you've got now more daycare issues. You now have gas. You now have the cost of parking downtown. You now have the cost of eating out, right? So for all these reasons, I think there's going to be another, period of greater appreciation than maybe has happened in the last couple of years.
Okay. So you started talking earlier about proximity to downtown and how it was about 20 minutes to get to parts of downtown from here. What other forms of transportation are there besides walking? I mean, clearly it's a walkable area.
Yeah.
But what would that look like for someone if they worked in downtown or perhaps on the east side?
Yeah, so one thing about this, it's a really easy access to freeways. So just a couple miles to the freeway, you can be in Bellevue from this part of Capitol Hill that I'm at in 12 minutes. No, and that's
With
no
no
traffic.
traffic.
That's no traffic. So depending on the time that you go. But, you know, what I find right now is still the traffic has not returned to those old levels, right? So even if I had to go to an appointment at 8 a.m., I'd probably be leaving at 7:30. So it's not too bad at all to get over to Bellevue or Redmond, right? So if you work at Microsoft, Redmond, you work at Bellevue downtown, you work at Google in Kirkland, there are lots of people who live in this part and head over there. So that's like the freeway side.
So does everyone have to have a car when they live in Capitol Hill?
No, I mean, with things that are expanding now are the light rail, right? So you've got light rail, which now goes into downtown all the way to SeaTac. Light rail is about 6 blocks away from me. One of the first major light rail stations that expanded outside of downtown Seattle. And then you've got it going north to University of Washington, now all the way up to Linwood.
Right.
So that's creating a lot more opportunities for people, you know, to live in the suburbs and still be able to get into downtown. But Capitol Hill is one of those central stations, you know, that they're able to stop at. And then ultimately on the south side, not Capitol Hill, but maybe 10 minutes from here at I-90 interchange, you're going to have the east side link rail go from that station over to Bellevue as well, and it goes right into the heart of downtown Bellevue.
And obviously
So
that's
all this
easy
is
enough.
continuing.
Easy enough to connect with from here in Capitol Hill,
Yeah. And then you got Madison Park. Madison Park has this road called Madison Avenue, which goes straight into downtown. They just added these rapid ride bus lines, which get you into downtown in 10 minutes.
That sounds awesome.
So pretty quick. So a lot of people don't have cars. A lot of people walk. This is a place where you can definitely not need a car. If you do have a car, you'll find that when you're buying real estate, particularly townhomes, Some have parking, some don't. If you want parking, you may have to pay $75,000 to $100,000 more for a place with parking.
Well, and parking's obviously at a premium in an urban environment like this. I mean, is that something that you've heard clients bring up as a concern?
I've heard lots of people bring it up as a concern. When we have a party here, people are like, oh, I got to get there 10 minutes early so I can figure out where to park. You know, it just kind of is what it is. We have 2 cars, 1 car in the garage, so I have to search for parking. But with the parking permits, if you're a resident, you'll be able to, I don't park further than 2 blocks away, and most of the time I park that block or that block. So not too bad. I'm fine dealing with it.
Yeah. I think it totally depends on like when we were talking about the different kind of, pockets, neighborhood pockets in Capitol Hill. Where we're at now, there's, a lot more townhomes. So, just how many people, the density per square foot is going to be less. Once you get into where you're saying 50 unit older buildings and stuff, and the density goes up and up and up, parking can be more challenging. But I think the reality is that if you have a car, you want to have a car, which I'm not against. I've always wanted to have a car. When I lived up here, I had a car. It did meant that sometimes I had to circle my house a couple times, but then you kind of learn that, this spot's always all heavy. Nobody knows it's a real spot and all that, but you figure it out. But I think, in the end, if you want to go from, your garage, get in your car, go to work, get back in your car, go right to your garage, go to the grocery store in a big parking lot and never have to deal with that, this isn't going to be why you're here. People that live here like to, walk around. And it's so easy to do that it's not a driveway to car to another driveway type situation. That's part of living in the city, which makes it great. That's why people love it up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I can, being in real estate, right, having to drive places, I am driving my car, but I can still go. If I don't have a bunch of meetings, I can be here for 3 days without moving the car.
Yeah.
Lisa, my wife, can not move her car for 5 days, right? So there's just so many options to not have to hop in your car.
Yeah. Well, Seattle is such a unique city in that it has such distinctive neighborhoods, right? Capitol Hill is obviously one of the most well-known. But compared to some of the other neighborhoods in Seattle, how does Capitol Hill compare? I mean, to let's say Ballard, for instance. Ballard's a neighborhood that has a very vibrant, urban kind of area. Not quite the same size as Capitol Hill, but how does it compare to Ballard?
Dude, you take that one on.
All right.
Michael's lived in Ballard. I've got some interesting, fun stories to share, too.
I've lived in Ballard for quite a while now. So I would say the biggest comparison is that in Ballard, you've got really, the old town Ballard, which has now been mostly turned into a walkable street. It's a cobblestone street. It's really cool. It's kind of like our little slip of what, Pike Pine would be for Capitol Hill. It's a little bit more family oriented, I would say. There's only like maybe 2-3 places that would play like live music, where up here you've got stuff that's open way later. I mean, I used to go to places here at 3 a.m. and listen to music, So you don't really see that there. And then beyond that strip, it just pretty much all goes residential up the hill. So you've got, still have condos, townhomes, single family homes. Most of the time you get some sort of a yard, so it's definitely not as kind of city feel that you would get in Capitol Hill. But with Capitol Hill, you go through neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood, you're passing retail, you're passing, clothing shops, coffee shops, little independent stores, QFC, Safeway. There's always something there. It's not like, okay, this is where we have our commerce and then this is where the people live, like it is in Ballard. In Capitol Hill, it's all woven together as you kind of go in between those different neighborhoods with different identities. So it's definitely less of kind of a residential feel to it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good way to compare it to Ballard. Like, you can compare it to, let's talk about Queen Anne. Queen Anne has its pockets. Right. The upper part of Queen Anne, great schools, families, strollers everywhere, right? Parks, kids running around. That's the top of Queen Anne, right? Incredibly residential feel for it. So a lot of people who move here who want that walkability but want the family vibe, if they can afford it, a lot of people are looking in Queen Anne, right? You're not seeing that as much here, but we do have these different neighborhoods. I can tell you, walking on Broadway, which is just 2 blocks from here, you've got, again, bars, restaurants, coffee, whatever you can think of, right? Grocery. When Lisa and I are walking and we see somebody with a kid, like a little kid, like 7 or under, or a stroller, like, whoa, what's that kid doing here? And it's not like it's not safe. It's just not a place where you see people walking around with their kiddos and strollers.
You'll
right?
see them walking.
Yeah. Instead, they'll be in another part of the area where you go to 19th Ave East. You're like, oh, this is really nice. Look at the Macrina Bakery. Look at this beautiful St. Joe's School. The churches are nice, right? So there you'll see a lot more of that. So it just depends on, what part you want to be in, right? You're not seeing the Pike Pine area with bars and things like that. A lot of families walking through there.
Yeah.
One good comparison, I don't know if this is like a thing, but you can call it like the brunch test, okay?
The
So
brunch.
the brunch test defines what the neighborhood is like. And so I compare this to Ballard because Lisa and I used to always go to Ballard a lot for brunch. You'd have to get to a brunch spot at like 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m. in order to be able to not have to wait for an hour and a half.
Right.
If I go to a brunch spot like at 11:30 or noon, it's like wide open seating. So people aren't even waking up. They're like getting to brunch at like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
It is incredibly like dead there.
Yeah.
Another one is I can call it the happy hour measurement. So in Ballard, happy hour starts at 4, and it literally starts at 4.
Yeah.
It's busy. People are there. If you want to get a happy hour spot, you got to be there at 4. Here, if I go to happy hour at 4, I'm like, yeah, we're the old people going to happy hour at 4. Like, nobody is here, right? So that's another difference in, like, what time the neighborhoods start or the vibes or, when things get going. So for us, it's great. Since we now tend to go to happy hour a little bit earlier, we're getting good deals.
Right.
The food is great.
They're getting older, man.
But there's not a lot of, it sometimes is incredibly boring, so, because I want more people.
Yeah.
But that's a
brunch
good way to
test.
put it.
I love the brunch.
test.
Yes, that's a good
very
one.
true.
The brunch test.
There's a place that Tara and I try to go to in Ballard, and I mean, it's insane. Like you have to get there way outside because there's already 12 people waiting at like 8:30 in the morning. It's breakfast, it's insane. But yeah, the Capitol Hill. When I lived up here, if you could roll out of bed and get somewhere by 1:30, you're like, we made it. That's what the lifestyle's different.
Yeah, there's this place, and it's funny, I can't think of the name off the top of my head right now, but it's a good spot for brunch. It's also a bar. It closes, and then it reopens at 6. I can tell you it's probably busier at 6 for the people who are ready to get their alcohol, their breakfast cocktail, and haven't gone to bed, than it is at like 9.
Totally. Totally.
They're getting their last drink, maybe breakfast after they stayed out. So, completely different vibe.
Let's talk a little bit about the food scene, though, because
Yeah.
I know that's such a big part of why you guys moved here, and I know you guys are big foodies. But we've talked about density and how there's a lot of stuff to do. But what are the restaurants like here? I mean, are there a lot of varying price points, or is it a lot of ethnic foods, or is it tell me, I guess, what the vibe looks like?
Yes.
I understand.
It is. Well, Michael,
when you think
big foodie as well, having worked in the high-end restaurant industry for years, right? I can speak to that.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about Capitol Hill, and then even moving down towards the Central District, you start to see that the different foods are more owner operated. So it's like if you're getting Ethiopian food, like that person knows that cuisine, they own that place, they work at that place.
So we're not seeing a lot of change.
You're getting the real deal.
Yeah, a lot of them. Anyway.
Or if you go where if you went into Ballard or something, you might have a restaurant that is doing this type of food, but it's it might be a small restaurant group. There's not a ton of chains, but they might have, we're doing this fusion restaurant. We've got a Thai restaurant. We do like a New American or something. Yeah. It's not a single identity mom and pop style where you do get that here. So the connection to where the food came from and its community is way stronger. It's way more authentic. And you get to try so much like cool, different foods and meet different people. Food connects community a lot. So I think being able to go sushi, Thai, Ethiopian, Indian food, and it's just, back to back to back, and it's all like awesome and totally affordable, for a more expensive part of town sometimes to live. When we're talking about prices, like you can get food here, for, especially if you're just buying a lunch or something, for a really reasonable price and have like a really authentic experience, which is great.
Yeah. Like I can go down the street. We have 1 block away, Deluxe Bar and Grill. Their happy hour goes 4 to 6. You can get an $8 old fashioned, get a $9 burger, so super cheap, right? But that's a spot, and that's where we actually watch games, like so college football games. They have a couple pool tables. They have a bar area, and then they have an area where you can bring kids, even though I actually forgot you could bring kids because I never see a kid in there. But I saw one the other day. But that's that, right? Then you have, let's talk about the other stuff. Bait Shot, which is a kind of a divey bar, but not really divey. You don't go, this is a dive bar. But you go in, and it's pretty cool and eclectic. And for all you people trying to find like the Christmas bars, right, with all the decorations that are labeled Christmas bars that have lines around the corner, this is a Christmas bar, but they don't advertise it, so you can get in there. So go check it out. Then you go to Star, which is run by Mongolians, and they have sushi. Like a lot of places can't do a lot of different foods well, but they're able to do sushi, Chinese, Mongolian, all very well, right? Then you have, I could just keep going and going, right?
There's
American restaurants, Altura for high-end Italian, Tacos Chukis, which is a great taco place, right? So if you want to keep your meal to low budget, but no margaritas there, so you can't get a margarita. You could just go. I could go block by block by block and talk about all the different spots.
In other words, what we're learning is if you want to know more about the Capitol Hill food scene, you talk to this guy.
I think it's like you can think of like, okay, a day in the life of a 20-something-year-old in tech, right? Maybe you wake up, you go get your coffee. You don't have to start your tech meetings until 10 a.m., right? You're at Victrola Coffee or Cafe Ladro, all kinds of different places, right? Then kind of lunch kicks around and maybe you order your Uber Eats because you're working from home, or you pop in to get a taco, or there's now not an Evergreens, but the Sweet Greens salad place as well too. Then evening comes around and maybe now you're probably not going to happy hour because you're in tech and you work till 8, but then you can go out and you can meet friends and go to all this variety of bars and restaurants,
So talking about tech, has the tech scene really impacted Capitol Hill? I mean, how has it changed? Obviously, let's say what the tech scene's been kind of growing here in the Seattle area for about 15 years now, give or take.
Yeah.
Has there been a lot of change in Capitol Hill from the tech perspective?
I mean, absolutely. It's just that the walkability and the access to downtown. So you see a lot of, software engineers. I don't know how many pins. What do you do? I'm a software engineer. Oh, I'm a software engineer. I'm a software engineer. There's just a lot of them, right? And they're very diverse, right? Some look like they're just out of college. That many are female. Many are international, from India, from Australia. It's incredibly diverse. But then that's what drives the demand for housing here. Sometimes when you go out, you can see this. What appears to be, at least visually, just a lot more young professionals, who are loving it because they're close to work, yet they still want this, fun, vibrant life. Mm-hmm. Like, this as real estate agents, right? When we talk to different clients, you're at different phases of your life. And I find that a lot of the younger people want to stay close here, but then at some point, maybe they're ready to start a family. Now they're moving a little bit further north, getting into a quieter area. Right, so you go through these different phases. That at the same time, there's really good private schools here as well. Not necessarily the highest rank when it comes to public elementary schools. So just FYI for those of you thinking about this area. But you've got St. Joe's, which is an incredibly popular school, and you got a Holy Names, and lots of great schools here as well too. So that's actually what draws the family side of things, right? And people with kids, and it's incredible how you can get this huge mix of people. Yet, we're fortunate enough to still be able to have, people who aren't in like big tech, but who worked for small shops and, maybe don't have as high an income, and it's not easy, but it's still nice to have options for them, and have that diversity here.
Mm-hmm. So, we've obviously talked about food and things to do. I mean, you mentioned earlier, Maynard, about volunteer park. I mean, I know that's a big part of, your desirability in this area,
Yeah.
and, bringing Kenji over there and going for walks. What is volunteer park, and why is it so important to Seattle as a whole?
Yeah, well, volunteer park it's just well taken care of. It's one of the most beautiful parks in Seattle. In the park, there's a Seattle Asian Art Museum. There's this old water tower that you can kind of walk up, and it's the second highest point in all of Seattle, actually, Volunteer Park.
Oh, yeah.
There's a neighborhood in West Seattle called High Point, and that's the highest point. But, in the early, 19th century, like late 1890s, this is where some of the kind of the wealthiest settlers here in Seattle started to establish that area. So there's art, there's a little bit of theater, but you just see a lot of people go there with their dogs and have picnics. There is a conservatory. So it's just a beautiful, large park, a peaceful place. There's tennis courts. And you happen to be surrounded also by houses, where there's one particular street that connects to Volunteer Park is called Millionaires Row. Now it's more like Multi-Millionaires Row. But, beautiful, large estate type houses. But that's a great place for us to just go and, walk and get a picnic blanket. It's dog friendly. From the standpoint, it's not necessarily considered an off-leash dog park, but, well-behaved dogs are off leash running around. So, it's a great place to hang out, get away. And compare that to Cal Anderson Park, which is right in the Pike Pine corridor, and that has ball fields, lots of games, soccer, softball, kickball, another big open area to hang out. It's also close to the farmers market, which happens a couple times a week. And that is an unofficial off-leash dog park. So that's a hidden dog park. I think one thing you'll find here is you'll see a lot more dogs than what you will babies in Capitol Hill. But I think that's generally true of Seattle.
Yeah.
All right. What's a unique fact about Seattle? We have more dogs per capita than we have kids per capita.
Wow, that is insane. That is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about, obviously the unofficial off-leash dog park, and that's obviously a secret that only locals would know. What's something else that would be really intriguing for someone to know that, hey, I live here. It's a best kept secret of the locals.
Yeah. Good question. I mean, I'd like to give a shout out to my favorite sushi restaurant, Aoki Sushi and Grill, and it's just honestly like the highest quality sushi. They deliver every single time, and the prices are reasonable. At the same time, we've got the fancy high-end omakase sushi as well. There's a couple spots here that are worth going to if you want to have that like true Japanese experience. But as far as like the hidden gems, I think you just got to figure out like what's kind of important to you, right? There's another cool place if you're a dog and sushi lover. It's called Liberty. So Liberty Cocktail Bar, and they serve sushi, and they have fancy cocktails, right? Craft cocktails. They're open every single day of the year, even Christmas, and they don't advertise it, but dogs are allowed.
Yeah. My cousin bartends there. You probably said better.
Yeah. See.
What about you? What do you have any hidden gems that you know about?
Yeah, I think that Liberty's a hidden gem for sure. I think that the hidden secret of Capitol Hill is that you really can have two different experiences. Like you could move up here just because you want to be close to downtown, right? That's a good enough reason as any reason to buy something or rent something. But if you want that different experience, like when I was living up here, it was cool because you got to kind of try a bunch of different things. Some things you're going to love, some things you're not going to like, just like anywhere else. It's not like every single restaurant's awesome, but there's a lot of really good ones. But if you start to kind of frequent those places, because the lifestyle's different, like, especially as a younger person, I wasn't buying a bunch of groceries and cooking a lot at home. I was like buying coffee. I was buying a croissant. Buying a sandwich. I was buying this. It's like it can add up for sure, but that's kind of part of the fun of it. So you've got to kind of place value on that. You start frequenting these businesses, and they'll treat you differently. You'll get to know somebody. So, and when you walk in, like, it's really cool if you're young and you're on a date and everybody knows you're like, hey, come on, and there's two right here. And that type of stuff happens here where, you might not see that in a lot of other neighborhoods. So you really kind of get to know this guy works Thursdays on this night and blah, blah, blah. You become part of that scene. And you kind of develop these friendships with people that, I was one of those people. So, I was working in a service industry, but you can, you can go to these shops and they'll get to know you and really appreciate you on a one-on-one level for supporting their business. So I think that really enriches the experiences. Why do I live here? Why do I struggle with parking? Well, I heard somebody playing music in the park. Well, that all stuff might bother you, but if you really enrich yourself in the community, it's like, oh, this is kind of awesome.
Yeah. I mean, to give some like real perspective too, right? Most everything we're talking about is positive because there are so many positives here. But I'll walk down the street to go to the grocery store. I'm like, I don't feel like walking right in front of the entrance to the grocery store because all there's a few homeless people there, right? And it's looking a little sketchy. But that's kind of more of a big city problem, not a Capitol Hill problem.
It's unique to
it's not unique to it. But like Michael said, I think the thing about it, there's so much diversity. Like, you can just choose your own adventure, what you feel like feeling that day. Do you want a more quieter vibe? Go over to 19th Ave, go to Monsoon Restaurant, by the way, phenomenal Vietnamese food. Go to Pike Place Corridor for a little bit more action. Really just depends on, what you want. There's little small exercise studios, right? So I get my yoga on at Core Power Yoga a few blocks away. Everything is just there for you. But yeah, getting to know some of the small business owners and having that really insider experience is different. And I think the thing too is that's surprising, or not surprising, I guess, as the more we talk about it, because there are so many different little areas, like you can do something new every single day for 365 days.
Totally.
Or you can also feel like you didn't necessarily connect with anything individually at a deep level because you're just all over the place and there's so many people in and out.
I do think that is one of the changes when we're talking about, how is tech or just more people or money coming into the Capitol Hill neighborhood, and how it's changed is the types of businesses that are thriving here are much more varied as well. So, 15, 20 years ago, it was primarily music venues, clubs, bars, and little kind of lower end, I said lower, but more inexpensive food options.
Yeah.
Now you've got, $300 a plate places, they're prefix menus, beautiful, restaurants like that. You've got yoga studios, you can buy any sort of green smoothie you want, 5 different places. I mean, there's just a ton more kind of, offerings that are offering different types of lifestyles, not just young, I'm partying and I'm just making it through. It's like, you can really build a life here as you grow out of a youthful stage.
Yeah.
So obviously Capitol Hill has a ton of history surrounding it, and we're obviously in a modern standalone home here right now. How do residents feel about the development that's happened over the last 20, 30 years and the continued development now?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we know that in Seattle, they're trying to add more density with, more homes per single family lot.
Yeah.
And Capitol Hill is one of those places. Ballard is another one where it's very common to do so. So how do people feel about that in general?
Terrible, awesome, sucks. I wish it was the way it used to be. Oh, this is great. There's so much change and energy coming to this area right now. Oh man, why can't we have it like it used to be? So honestly, there's like a wide variety of experiences you could probably ask about any neighborhood, right? Some people are embracing change. Some people who have been here a long time can't stand it when somebody refers to this as Cap Hill.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
always call
Capitol Hill.
It is.
It's Capitol Hill. But what's funny is that people who come here have been moving to the area.
Yeah.
It just slides off their tongue. It's Cap Hill. So why yell at them for calling a place that they're actually speaking very positively about, because they're calling it Cap Hill. So I don't know. I think you can get 10 different answers from 10 different people.
I found people to be, if you've lived in a place for a long time, it's changed, meaning to speak plainly, it's like, oh, now it's more dense. My neighbor now has a daddy in the backyard and there's more people. And I see young, whatever. They can, there's some people that go, hey, that's great. Look at, the solutions that we're finding through real estate. Or they can just be a grouch about it. And maybe there's some growing pains there that are understandable, but nobody complains about it when they want to sell.
Yeah.
So like when you go, oh, they're doing this and this, it's like, well, guess what? Your land just became more valuable too. All of these places, like when you're saying millionaires roast, there's some people that are, like you said, multi-millionaires out there that maybe it's that they bought their place, 100 years ago and now things have changed around them. That's going to be true with any growing city. And the good news is that as the city grows, it means that it's still attractive and there's investment coming towards it. So if it stops growing, that's a problem.
Well, I think it's important to also make note of the fact that, a lot of this development isn't happening in the truly established, like Millionaires Row.
Yeah, those I think
you're not going to see townhouses thrown in there. Exactly. Yeah. Number one, because the land is too expensive to start with, and number two, development costs would not blend well with it. So, the development is primarily happening in the more urban parts of Capitol Hill and obviously other neighborhoods as well.
Yeah. I mean, land is finite and it's scarce, and housing density is a problem in all major city that are going to continue to grow, right? And with Seattle being such a big tech anchor, along with all the, other beautiful reasons about this place with water and mountains and diversity, right? It's going to continue to grow. So housing affordability or housing needs is definitely, an issue that's not going to stay. So that's why you will get different answers from different people. There's too many Lime scooters out there right now. Why are all these people on scooters? Anyway, just pick which one bugs you. Yeah.
So, what do you envision, especially as a current Capitol Hill resident, what do you envision the future of Capitol Hill looking like? Do you continue to see more and more density? What are some of the negatives that you're envisioning happening in the future?
Yeah, the negatives will be continued, traffic issues, and I got to be careful about packages getting stolen, but I think that's honestly a universal thing almost anywhere, right? So we make sure that our packages are delivered to the side there, and luckily haven't had, knock on wood, haven't had too many issues there. My car is parked down the street, and again, knock on wood, I haven't had my car broken into, but I walk by cars all the time with smashed windows, and so I just make sure not to ever have anything visible that somebody might want to, feel like, oh, there's some valuable stuff there for me. So, there's that. It's not cheap to buy here, right? So it's pretty expensive to get in the neighborhood. We're pretty fortunate. We feel grateful that we were able to buy when we did, right? And we know that, should we choose to leave this place, right, we've got a very attractive rental property, right, that we can use. And we have even thought about picking up another one and doing an Airbnb. Right. So the future is going to be continued growth. There's just so much scarcity. Downtown Seattle is always going to be an anchor, right? It's still close to Bellevue, easy proximity to the airport, so much international interest in this area.
So I think we'll kind of wrap up with a question for both of you guys. So if you were someone, okay, let's just say, Michael, if you were a tech person who was thinking about moving to Capitol or to Seattle in general, why would Capitol Hill be the place for you as let's say a 20-something tech person or 30-something tech person? Maybe you've got a spouse or a partner. Yeah. Why would you move to Capitol Hill?
Well, if I had a spouse or if I were single, and I'm going to uproot my life, I'm taking a new job, I don't know anything about the city, I'm like, okay, I want this to be worth it. I want to know what this city is. When I think of Seattle, because of my experience here, in Capitol Hill, I typically think of this is what Seattle is. It's a good representation of what, a guess of what Seattle culture is like. So put me there, because at least if I, say I'm moving to Boston, I want to move into Boston. I don't want to move outside of it and kind of peek into it. I want to be in the thick of it. So I think it offers everything. It is culturally diverse, so you probably feel comfortable no matter where you're coming from. You're not going to feel like you're sticking out in one way or another. You're bound to find somebody who is doing what you're doing. So if you're in tech, if you're an engineer, or if you moved here for finance or whatever, there's people in this neighborhood that do all of those things. And you don't have to worry about a car. You don't have to, there's people coming from places that they've never had a car. So that's actually, I've seen that as a benefit here. There's no way that you move here, and even if you decide to move out of Capitol Hill in a year or 2 years, that you're going to look back and go, I regret doing that. It's a blast. I mean, at any age, it's fun. As long as, you can afford it at what you're trying to do, it's not going to be a regrettable experience. So I think it's attractive.
And Maynard, how about for you? Let's just say, you're new to Seattle. You're someone in your age bracket. You're you're trying to experience Seattle. I mean, would this be the place that you would come to, or are there other areas that would kind of stand out more?
This is going to be the most, I would say, energetic, busy neighborhood that you can live in. That is close to downtown Seattle, gives you easy access to freeways and, employment centers, and you walk and you're in the mix of a very busy, kind of bustling city, right? So if you're attracted to that vibe, right, then this is the right place for you. A lot of people who move from New York City, San Francisco, markets like that are used to be very busy, love it here, right? But if you're kind of from, I don't know, an area that is a little bit more sleepy, suburban, you're used to having big land, you want your peace and quiet, this is not the place for you.
Unless you want to have that experience.
Right, that's what I mean. If you want peace and quiet, it's not the place for you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just depends on what's kind of what do you envision your daily life to be like, right? And yeah, for us, our daily life is walk in the morning to yoga, come back, work, be able to figure out if I'm here, are we going to go to lunch? Places to walk our dog. Everything is very easy and accessible for us, and it's been perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as a real estate agent, I've never lived in Capitol Hill, of course, but, one of the things that stood out to me the most whenever I've worked with people who've either explored Capitol Hill or, have actually purchased here, is that there's no same. It's always different, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has a different story, and that's part of the wonderful thing about Capitol Hill is how diverse it is and how unique, how uniquely it can kind of fit with so many different types of lifestyles. Clearly, density, energetic, as you're mentioning, but that doesn't necessarily mean that has to be the case. Especially as you get into some of the more, further away from the Pike Pine corridor and Broadway, it really does feel very chill and relaxed. So
that's a great way. That's a great way to summarize it. I talk to a lot of people, and I say I'm in the North Capitol Hill part, and if they know the differences, they're like, oh wow, that's residential. I love that area. It's more quiet. It's my speed.
Yeah.
Like if I said I live in the Pike Pine corridor, there a lot of people would be like, oh, wow.
Good.
Totally.
But you're always just steps away from getting some space.
Yeah,
what I mean? It's not like a totally.
I go there all the time. 10-minute walk.
Yeah.
So.
Well, guys, thank you for your expert advice on Capitol Hill. I mean, I know I've learned a lot today, even though I do know quite a bit about Capitol Hill, but you guys have been a great resource, and I'm sure the listeners are going to love it too. So
yeah. Well, thanks everybody for watching. I hope you got some deep insights there. Look forward to talking again about the next neighborhood on our next podcast. So if you have any suggestions on what you'd like us to cover, please let us know.